Court will now reconvene. Has our witness, Miss Olga O'Reilly, recovered? Yes, Your Honor. Well, she's regained consciousness. Perhaps we can hear her version of the events again? That's the thing. You see, she's quite fatigued. You're looking a bit fatigued yourself, Mr. Payne. Yeah, well, I mean, that's just his default state of being. Sadly, fatigue is insufficient grounds for refusing to testify or prosecute. The defense would like to request that Miss O'Reilly take the stand. Very well. The witness will take the stand. Get yourself on up here. Perhaps you could repeat your name and profession. Or perhaps you'd rather admit that you're a poor liar and a poor loser. Not. Oh, okay. Name's Olga O'Reilly. That's the truth. I'm a pro dealer. People call me Olga Quickfingers O'Reilly. Oh. Oh, really? Want to know something else? I'm not really Russian, and my last name sounds like O'Reilly. Yeah, I knew that last part. There. That's the truth. I hope you're satisfied. Well, at least we were right about a facade. Witness, you will tell the court what you were really up to that night. Fine, I'll talk. We had a plan, see? Let me remind you that you're currently under oath. Any further fabrications will have serious consequences. Fine. Okay. Alright. Like I said, I'm a pro. That guy Smith hired me to do what I do best. I was planted at the Borscht Bowl Club several days prior to the night of the game, as a waitress. So you were in cahoots with the victim? I mean, I wouldn't really use that word because, you know, it's not the 30s, but sure. Not that he needed my help. Smith is a well-known poker player in some circles. But winning wasn't the main purpose of this game. It was about destroying a legend, the unbeatable Phoenix Wright. The plan was simple. Elegant, really. You see, we set up a trap of sorts. I was to plant a card in Wright's pocket beforehand, and then deal 5 aces during one of their games. When their hands were revealed, Smith would call him out and search Wright. He would then pull out the planted card, and the trap would snap shut. You swapped the cards! Exposed as a cheater and losing on top of it. It would have been a great double play. Just like that, the legend would be dashed to pieces. Indeed. Getting caught red-handed at cheating would cast doubt on all his prior wins. A 7-year legend destroyed by one little card. That was the plan. Seems like a weird thing to just want to do, but alright. Oh really? Oh really? How droll. But it appears you made quite the mistake. A mistake? I agree. The trap was elegant. Yet, what happened to that planted card? Hey, that's right. He's lucky, I'll give him that. You'd have to be to slip free from a trap laid by Olga Quickfingers O'Reilly. Oh, really? The witness would be much cuter if she dispensed with the evil mastermind shtick. Cute? Who wants to be cute? I'm not cute, I'm bad. You hear me? Bad! Bad. When you're through being bad, perhaps you could testify to the court. Tell us about this trap and how it was sprung. How did you spring the sprung that you sprang? That night, I planted the card like I was supposed to. And Wright lost the hand just like he was supposed to. Then Smith searched him. But the planted card was gone. The trap failed. The next moment, Wright picked up a bottle and swung it. It wasn't me who hit Smith. It was that no-good cheating defendant. A surprisingly frank testimony that still leaves us mostly in the dark. The trap was perfect, I tell you. Perfect! If that rotten cheater hadn't messed it up. Look who's talking. Well, the testimony, for what it's worth, is all yours, Mr. Justice. With witnesses like her, who needs criminals? And with defendants like Mr. Wright, who needs prosecutors? Alright, so taking some information that I got last time, I think I know what I need to talk about. Let's see. You planted the cards. You lost the hands. The card was gone. I am interested in that, but... The next moment, Wright picked up a bottle and swung it. Okay, I'm interested in this. Wait. Isn't that a little odd? What's odd? You searched Mr. Wright, thoroughly and found nothing? Which means he didn't cheat. Which means he had no reason to strike the victim. Well... Okay, that's new. What was that just now? I sensed something. Something wrong, Mr. Justice? No, nothing, Your Honor. What to do? Should I press her a little harder? I'm gonna go ahead and say yeah. I just wanted to press her on that because she put her hand on her neck again. And I was told that that was a thing she do. Miss O'Reilly, you're hiding something. What are you talking about? You? Me? Quick Fingers O'Reilly? Hide something? Whoa. The defense will refrain from baseless accusations. I have one question for the witness then. You say you saw the moment the defendant hit the victim. Is this true? Of course it's true. I did see it. Honest. I saw it when Wright hit him. With my own eyes, I saw it. It's this weird vibe I'm getting. That witness, for instance, Miss O'Reilly, she would touch the back of her neck during certain parts of her testimony. Did you notice? Touching her neck, was it? Whoa, hello. What's happening? What's going on? This sensation, it's coming into focus. There, that twitch. It's so clear. It's like I could perceive her habit like I couldn't before. That's different. Perceive button. Okay.
Gotcha!
Oh God, he perceived.
What does this mean exactly? Miss O'Reilly, perhaps you're unaware of this yourself. Unaware of what? Whenever you get to a certain part of your testimony, you touch the back of your neck with your left hand. But my neck? So what? What indeed, Justice? I hadn't noticed anything of the sort. When she says that part of the testimony, she's subconsciously recalling something. Her body reacts to the memory, and she touches her neck. I'm sure of it. A memory? Would someone care to explain what he's babbling about? This is highly unusual, but let's ask the defense. You claim the witness is remembering something. Maybe you have evidence of this memory to show us? Her habit is scratching her neck whenever she talks about the moment of the crime. So, what would remind her most of the moment of the crime? Miss O'Reilly, whenever you recall the crime that night, you scratch your neck. I've noticed it happens when you think about the moment of the crime. There must be some reason behind this habit of yours. I believe the weapon that left an erasable impression on your neck is this. It sounds like we're going with the weapon.
Take that!
Are we? Whenever she talks about the moment of the crime, she touches her neck. And what reminds us more of the moment than this bottle? The murder weapon. But something doesn't fit. If you were only the witness to the crime, why would that make you touch your neck like you're in pain? What's he talking about now? It was Mr. Smith, the victim, who was hit. Not you. This is a cross-examination, not a cross-wild conjecture. Those are kinds of evidence. The witness's habits? They're completely irrelevant. Admittedly, that is entirely true. Justice, I'll admit, I'm a bit confused myself. This is certainly a unique cross-examination. I'll explain later, just trust me. Now's our only chance to break her. Miss O'Reilly, please testify in detail about the moment of the crime. The very moment! Yet, I am knowing nothing. Well, that's a load of hooey right there. We know you're not Russian. The witness will testify, please. Now. Bah, fine. He's the one who did it. I didn't let him out of my sight until the cops got there. Okay, well, that's clearly impossible. Hang on. Let's talk about it. You seem uneasy. You try standing up here. Her eyes are darting all over the place. It must be getting warm. Tell me, after the crime, what was the defendant like? Well, he must have been stunned by the weight of his crime. He sat in a daze at that table until the cops came. Unlikely. considering he left to go call the cops. Intriguing. I believe you've gotten all the testimony you're going to get out of this witness. So, what do you think about her testimony? I'll tell you what I think. Her testimony is flawed. Is basically bogus. It contradicts the evidence. What? What's that? Well, show us this evidence, Mr. Justice. This evidence that you claim contradicts the testimony. She didn't let him out of her sight until the cops got there. I know there's some evidence that contradicts that. It's the cell phone. Miss O'Reilly, we have a record here that clearly contradicts what you said. It states that the police were alerted by a report from the defendant. And we know that the defendant left the room, climbed the stairs, and made that phone call from the first floor of the Borscht Bowl Club. So, explain how you kept your eyes on the defendant when he left the room entirely. Lobster! The man who picked up a bottle and swung it that night wasn't the defendant. Huh. Just then, Smith grabbed the bottle from next to Wright, and he hit me. Some master of cheating you turned out to be. That would also explain the more feminine exclamation at the end there. When I came to, the victim was already dead. Is that it? That's why I couldn't reveal who I really was. If it came out that I was in league with Smith, I'd be a suspect for sure. Well, where does this leave us? Madness. This is madness. I'm dreaming. It must have been me who was hit with a bottle, and I'm imagining all of this. It appears our prosecution is at his wit's end. And frankly, I can't blame him. Mr. Gavin, what do you think about this turn of events? Mr. Gavin, sir? I believe that, as the defense in this case, we are compelled to call Miss O'Reilly a big fat liar. Not exactly professional about it, but okie dokie. What? 3 were in that room the night of the murder. The defendant, victim, and her. And she has a motive. A motive? Her plot foiled, the witness got into an argument with her client, Mr. Smith. And the denouement of that argument was murder. What? I'm no killer! It's a trap! Someone's trying to frame me! He has returned. What tangled webs we weave when we practice to deceive. So tangled we catch ourselves in the process. Mr. Wright? Such a hasty conclusion. It's not like you, Christoph Gavin. What are you saying? Why not consider the other possibility? That there was another person in the room at the time of the murder. Right, like Mr. Wright was saying before recess. A single card was swapped into the victim's hand after the murder, and the one who swapped the card didn't know 2 colors of cards were being used. A 4th person. This theory again! Your 4th person doesn't exist. Indeed. That's why I decided to bring this case to court. Here, where there's no escape and no chance for deception. The perfect place to catch the real criminal. The real criminal? And we're in luck. A clue to the real criminal's identity was kindly provided for us. And right at the beginning of the trial, no less. We're really going here, aren't we? What? Apollo, perhaps you know what I'm talking about? Sorry. Remember what I said? The 4th person who swapped the cards made one critical error. He or she wasn't considering the color on the backs of the cards. Right. But how could such an obvious mistake occur? The cards used for the last game were red. Yet, There's one person here in our court who thought those cards were blue. Yeah, I had that impression too. But why? Yeah, that's really kind of 100% exactly why I'm kind of confused by this. Like, why would they do this? I don't understand the motive. Well, Apollo, think you can figure out who it was? It's not me, I swear! Who is this fourth person? Why do I always get put on the spot like this? Ha ha ha! If you're gonna stay in the game, boyo, you're probably gonna have to get used to that. Let's hear what the defense has to say. Who was it? Who thought the cards used in the final game were blue? Yeah.
Take that!
Yeah. As I expected. Your eyes and ears are as sharp as your hair. I was right? Christoph Gavin, you were the fourth person that night. But of course Mr. Gavin knows the color of the cards. How would he? As you can see, the photo of the crime scene is in black and white. You can't tell which of the cards are blue, the ones on the floor or the table. But look! As you can see, the color's in this photo. Yeah, but when he said the cards were blue, it was well before this evidence came to light. Yeah, wow! Wow! Okay, but no, for real though, why though? Yeah, it was only that. It's a game in the purest sense. A competition, Your Honor. A competition? Yes, a test of wits, a silent clash of passions. Only the cards, their backs wreathed in blue flame, know its final outcome. Hell of a weird-ass mistake to make that ultimately became your undoing, if I'm being honest with you. If you didn't have such a flair for the dramatic, this could have been avoided for you, I guess. Well, Christoph? Mr. Gavin? It would also explain, yeah, you remember when there was like, well, you see, it's interesting that you would say that. As the defense, I really do feel like we should be, you know, dumping all of this on O'Reilly. Mr. Gavin! Is something the matter? No, nothing. Excuse me, it was just so sudden. Right, you aren't seriously accusing me, are you? Oh, Christoph. You know even I'd never take a joke this far. This has gone beyond ridiculous! Beyond dumb! This is insanity! The defendant accusing his own defense attorney of murder? I assure you, I'm quite sane. But what possible connection could Mr. Gavin have to the victim? I wasn't aware that I had a connection to Mr. Smith either. Yes, but Mr. Gavin and the victim had never even met. Well, what if they have? Huh? There is a possibility, after all. They may have met that night before the game started. What are you suggesting? Is this the truth Mr. Wright was staying silent about? Only one thing to do. Mr. Wright, the defense would like to request that you testify to the court. The defense would like to request no such thing. Mr. Gavin? Testimonies must relate to the case. How could anything happening before the game of poker be related? I'm not sure I follow, Mr. Gavin. As I explained before, the defense believes that Miss O'Reilly... Am I to assume you speak for Mr. Justice in this? He is the defense, not you. Yo, that's why he wanted Apollo for this! Because, yeah, you're not the attorney. You're the counsel. Oh, that was clever. Mr. Justice, the matter of Mr. Wright's testimony is up to you. Oh, okay. Does the court, in your opinion, need to hear Mr. Wright's testimony? I dare say that yes. Yes, we do. This was Mr. Wright's strategy. He was planning this all along. I intend to see it through. The defense would like to request that Mr. Wright testify to the court. Et tu, Justice? You would betray me, your teacher? Sorry, Mr. Gavin. This isn't about loyalty. This is about the truth. That's a real lawyer. Very well. The defendant, Mr. Wright, will take the stand, please. He's already there, so that makes it easy. That evening, Christoph and I had dinner. We sat at the table in this photograph. Shady Smith walked in 5 minutes after Christoph left. When the trap failed, Smith hit the waitress. The girl was knocked out cold and Smith was uncontrollable, and I left to call the police. When I returned, he was dead, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. And that's when I made another phone call to defense attorney Gavin. Mr. Gavin! You were at the Borscht Bowl Club the night of the murder? I dined with him rather frequently. And he talked to the defendant on the phone directly after the murder? Quite against my will, I had become involved in a murder. And I thought I might be in need of a lawyer, so I called him. You were planning this all along, weren't you, Wright? Just because you wanted to drag me into your little murder trial. The only thing I want is the truth. As I did back then, and now. I thought my office was doing you a favor when we took on your defense. It appears that I was wrong. Very well. The defense may cross-examine the witness. Justice? Sir? He's lying, and you're going to expose him. Understood, sir. Mr. Gavin versus Mr. Wright. This can't end well. Why can't I have a normal trial? Yeah, this is actually much more intense than Phoenix's first trial. This is like if it would suddenly revealed that Mia was the murderer in that whole situation. Okay. Alright. Where is a lie? The trap failed. He hit this thing. Well, let's start pressing. About this failed trap. This is the same trap that Miss Olga O'Reilly mentioned? The plan was simple. Elegant, really. You see, we set up a trap of sorts. That was to plant a card in Wright's pocket beforehand, and then deal 5 aces during one of their games. When their hands were revealed, Smith would call him out and search Wright. He would then pull out the planted card, and the trap would snap shut. You swapped the cards. Just like that, the legend would be dashed to pieces. Yes, a harmless prank, in essence. It was by quirk of fate that I happened to discover it. Quirk? I happened to put my hand in my pocket and found a card. The card she planted! Yeah, I snuck a peek at it and found it was the 5 of hearts. And I had a feeling something might happen, so I disposed of the card. Before the game. Disposed? Where? There was an empty bottle of grape juice I had been drinking right beside me. I threw the card inside the bottle. An empty bottle of grape juice? The murder weapon! Yeah, I rolled it up and shoved it in. The colored glass makes it hard to see. A battle of wits between the deceiver and the would-be deceived. That sounds like terrific drama. Yep, that's the series for you. A card inside the murder weapon? That's strange. Did the police miss it in their investigation? Maybe I'll take a look. I mean, that would be a pretty solid idea, wouldn't it? Hang on a second here. I don't see anything inside there. Mr. Wright, the poker head of courtroom number 3 approves of this battle of wits. Please revise your testimony with this new information. I discovered the trap during the game and disposed of the card in the bottle. But I don't see it in the bottle. The witness's statement is clearly faulty, Your Honor. And apparently it is deemed not as such. I'm sorry, but I can see nothing faulty. Ultimately, I will have to penalize you, Mr. Justice. What? Must be on the wrong track. How is that not the case? The girl was knocked out. Okay, well, no. It's got to be the new information. Maybe... Hang on. Maybe it's because I sort of... The bottle is completely empty. Yeah, it's completely and utterly empty. And it... Okay.
Objection!
Oh. Alright. My bad. Mr. Wright, if I may. Yes? I've examined the bottle, and I don't see any card in here. No? Mr. Wright, surely ... isn't all you have to say for yourself. I can't say that I know what happened to the card. I did put it in that bottle, however. Eh? Perhaps a 5th person came and took it out? Oh, and a 6th person could have helped? Mr. Gavin, Mr. Wright is your client. My apologies, Your Honor. I won't have you disparaging our investigation either. We looked inside that bottle. There was nothing. So what's going on? Is Mr. Wright hoodwinking us again? Or did the card just disappear? In any case, please continue the cross-examination. I'm afraid decisive contradictions call for decisive evidence. Oh. Push him harder, Justice. Break him. It's just you and the witness in the ring. Go for the KO! Why do I get the feeling we're not on our client's side anymore? Okay. Sat at the table in the photograph. He walked in 5 minutes after that. Disposed of the thing in the bottle. The girl was knocked out. He left to call the police. He was dead. Blood and stream from the thing. Could you tell us more about the phone call? Is that a thing you could do? Could you explain why you called Mr. Gavin? I'd obviously gotten involved in a rather sticky affair. And I figured Kristoff's law offices would give me a friend rate for my defense fees. Ah, glad to hear you intend to pay. Oh, I'll pay in full, Kristoff. It was I who got you involved, after all. You may find the price of your defense quite high, my good friend. Quite high. Is this the truth that Mr. Wright was talking about? Justice, you know what you have to do. He's lying. Expose him. Now. Yes, sir. I had to think. What's Mr. Wright trying to tell me with this testimony? The truth has to be in there somewhere. Alright, let's just keep pressing on the stuff that I haven't pressed before. You had dinner with Mr. Gavin? Yes, he dines with me at the Borscht Bowl Club quite frequently. We were enjoying a usual dinner at our usual spot. As usual. Usual. I always eat at the table closest to the piano. I see. Where Mr. Smith was sitting. So the plates and such on the table were from your dinner? Indeed. The remnants of my meal with Kristoff. We dined for 2 hours, then Kristoff left. After that... He walked in, discovered the trap, and disposed it in the bottle. Alright. You made the call to the police from the first floor of the restaurant, correct? Exactly. Cell phones don't get a signal down in the hideout, for whatever reason. Was anyone else on the first floor at the time? Not a soul. It was the middle of the night, after all. Who plays poker at 2 in the morning? Then again, I guess, who plays a lawyer-based crime visual novel game at 2:26 a.m. like I am doing? Anyway, so in the darkened restaurant, I called the cops. After making the call, I returned to the hideout. It didn't seem right to leave the injured waitress alone. Fair enough. Okay. And when you returned, the victim was already dead. Yes. I'll admit, I was a little startled when I walked in. Little? He was bleeding from his forehead, after all. I guess I'd be startled too if I walked in on a scene like that. And I already did that. Which means I have to present something. What am I missing here? Death caused by a single blow to the forehead. Sub-basement at the Borscht Bowl Club. Grape juice bottle used as the murder weapon. Photo of the forehead. Hat removed during investigation. Oh.
Objection!
Yeah, how did you... Oh, okay, yeah, all right. How would you know? Mr. Wright, if I may. Yes? Take a look at this photograph of the crime scene. See the victim here? He's wearing a hat. I wouldn't think you could see blood on his forehead. Good point. Justice, next time you point out an inconsistency, put a little more oomph into it. Mr. Wright, can you explain this to the court? Ah, I forgot to mention something. I was the one who put that hat on his head. Eh? You? You put the hat on the dead man's head? He wore it through our entire poker game. After calling the police when I returned to the scene, his head was in full view, shining bright, just like in this photograph. And I picked his hat up off the floor and put it on his head. Why'd you do such a thing like that? All I can say is, I'm sorry. But that's the only thing I touched at the crime scene. So, Miss O'Reilly didn't see it? It being the victim's, his head? I'd think not. She was out cold. I believe I was the only one who witnessed his hand, or his head. Now, here we go again. Mr. Gavin? Pardon. It just seems that our client is determined to lie his way through this case. Hey, he's still our client, isn't he? I believe that's enough of that. Mr. Gavin? This witness's testimony is more like a travesty. It's riddled with lies. I'm beginning to see how you came to lose your attorney's badge 7 years ago. Well, you certainly have a unique way of treating your clients, Kristoff. I never knew. I believe it was you who threw the first stone. Mr. Wright, if you intend to ever tell the truth about this case, it's now or never. Don't be misled. I haven't told a single lie here. Eh? When I noticed the trap, I put the card in the bottle to dispose of it. And when I put the hat on the victim's head, let's just say I had a reason for doing that as well. Reason? That reason is right here. Your cell phone? That night, recall that I spoke with Defense Attorney Gavin after calling the police. Just in case, I recorded our conversation. What's this? Now that we're all here, I see no reason why I shouldn't play it back for the court. Kristoff, I seem to be in a bit of trouble. What's this? Game not going well? Something like that. That gentleman who challenged you, he turned out to be good? He turned out to be dead. Someone hit him. Hard. You mean someone cracked that flawless bone china plate? It wasn't you, was it? Me? Please. The cops should be here any minute. I'm in your hands, should it come to that. How did you know that? Bone china plate? A kind of porcelain, very smooth and shiny. And not plate, but pate. I believe he was referring to a certain gentleman's balding forehead. But how would he know that? Yeah, no. The court appreciates the defendant's discretion in not indicating my forehead. Wait a second. Something's not right about that phone call. So, after Mr. Gavin ate dinner with you, he left the Borscht Bowl Club. Most certainly. Then how did he know? When did he see this bone china pate? Oh, that's right. Yes. That was when I began to see my good friend in a different light. Troubled, I returned to the crime scene. And when I spotted Mr. Smith's head again, I realized exactly what was wrong. Well, Mr. Gavin, the stage has been set. Perhaps you would like to explain this to the court? Exactly how did you come by your privileged knowledge of the victim's head? So, this is your reason. The reason why you put the victim's hat back on. Your point, Mr. Gavin? It's come down to this, has it? Phoenix Wright. I feel like there's a history here that I am not privy to, and it's making me uncomfortable. Order! I will have order! Mr. Payne! Yes, Your Honor? I believe this court has been left with no other choice. Are you prepared to hear Defense Attorney Gavin's testimony? Well, as the prosecutor, Very well. We'll break for 10 minutes. After which, Mr. Gavin will take the stand for a cross-examination. Are we all clear on that? Crystal clear, Your Honor. Very well. This will be the final recess for the day. He's so flustered he doesn't even want to go on the monkey bars. Mr. Gavin and Mr. Wright are both in the judge's chamber. Who'd have thought today would turn out like this? May I? Hi, hello. What? Hello, sir. Please, pick a card. What's all this about? Is this one okay? Excellent. I have a message for you. The last hand is about to be played. You'll need a trump card to make it. A trump card? The card you have chosen is magical. Use it wisely, and the game is yours. That's all. An ace? Where do I remember that card from? The missing ace. Mr. Smith's hand had 3 aces, and Mr. Wright's 2. It's 5 aces in all. It is true. I have seen it. It's the 5th ace. There was cheating, I swear to you. The missing 5th ace? Wait, this blotch of red, is this blood? You have your trump card. Now it's up to you to cut the deck and draw the truth. My father's fate is in your hands. I know you can do it. So I have a quick question. I know that it's probably not super important at this exact moment in time, but, y'all sure don't look like you're 7 years old. Unless I'm horribly mistaken on my timetable and... Well, no, definitely not, because the first 3 games took over the course of, like, 3 years at most, right? So then, yeah, even if I'm incredibly off, you're not 10 either, so, like... What? This bloodstained card is my trump card for finding the truth? I fell deep into thought as my mind raced to understand what this all meant. That girl. I'd seen her recently, but where? Well, that's when I made the connection. Stacey, she looks 7 in there! Huh. This is all very, very bizarre. Court will now reconvene. Defense Attorney Christoph Gavin, will you please take the stand? Now then, if you would, Mr. Payne. Yes, Your Honor. Will the witness state his name and occupation? Is this farce necessary, Your Honor? Believe me, far stranger things have gone on in this courtroom. Seriously, we had an exorcism that one time. It was weird. Fine, I'll play along. First, there's one thing we need to have made clear. How did you know about the secret beneath the victim's hat? By secret, I'm guessing he means the fact that Mr. Smith was bald. Forgive my curiosity, but what is it about this fellow's head? Your Honor seems to have an inordinate interest in it.
Objection!
Yo! I wouldn't call it inordinate. Phoenix music! I'm happy! Mr. Wright? What do you think you're doing, Wright? Well, things sure look different from the other side. You know what I mean, Apollo? That looks more like the Phoenix I know. Speaking of looking from the other side, let's consider something for a second. The victim wore that hat all night, never once taking it off except for that one time. That one time being the instant he was hit. Oh. When Mr. Wright returned from reporting the crime, the hat was lying on the floor. Mr. Wright picked it up and placed it on the victim's head. In other words, in order to have seen Mr. Smith's bald head, you would have had to have been there in the hideout at the time of the crime. In other words, I must be the real killer, is what you're trying to say? Not bad, Apollo. Mr. Gavin? I'm afraid that I haven't been entirely honest with the court. Oh, dear God, he's about to admit that he's Murder Man! What? Oh, I assure you I had the noblest of intentions. I did it all to protect my client, Mr. Wright. Excuse me. Yet, I'm afraid in the current situation, I see little reason to hide anything. Very well. Allow me to tell you the truth of what happened that night. Finally, you may begin your testimony. Tell us, how were you involved in the events of that fateful night? Start your lying! The rage I sensed in that man that night troubled me, so I returned to the club. I went down to the basement and peeked through the little window to the hideout. It must have been right after the murder took place. The victim was dead as he appeared in the photo. A bald head, an unconscious girl, and Wright holding a bottle in his hand. I sensed that was not the best place for me to be at the time, and so I left. That's when the call came from Wright. So, you witnessed the murder? For better or worse, I missed the actual moment of the deed. Mr. Gavin, may I remind you that you are on Mr. Wright's defense team? Your testimony is clearly disadvantageous to your client. What else could I say? I'm standing on the witness stand, after all. So you are, Mr. Gavin. And you had to testify as you just did. You had to tell them you saw the scene of the crime through that little window. Mr. Wright? You had to say that, because that was the only probable window of opportunity. Right, Apollo? Oh. Mr. Wright, the defense should do the cross-examination, not the defendant. Mr. Justice, are you prepared? Not even slightly. Yes, Your Honor. I can't believe I'm going up against Mr. Gavin. This trial is getting weirder and weirder. Okie dokie. Let's see. The rage sensing the man.
Hold it!
Are you talking to, like, who are you talking about? That man? You mean Mr. Smith? He was different from the other customers. His aura, shall we say. I knew he was a serious poker player, but it was more than that. So then, you knew the true nature of your client's job? Of course. But I also knew he wasn't engaged in gambling, which would be illegal. Well, it makes sense that he'd know. They were friends, after all. Which makes this entire situation very strange. Worried for my friend, I returned to the club. Yo, Phoenix's first case had him defending a friend from charges of murder. And Apollo's first case has Phoenix accusing a friend of murder. Poetry. You see, I feared this Mr. Smith might be coming to settle an old score. I see. What happened then? Okay. Went down to the basement and peeked in through the little window. Tell me about this little window. The little window. You mean the one used to keep watch up the stairs? Yes, a relic of the ancient past. The Black Marketeers used it, I believe. Why did you go through the trouble of peeking in through the window? Wouldn't it have been easier to just open the door and go into the room? I didn't want to upset Wright, you see. Upset Mr. Wright? Yes. What if my fears had been unfounded? I'd be walking in on their match. Bad form, to say the least. So far, everything he's saying makes sense. So far, anyway. Must have been right after the murder took place. The victim is dead as he appears in the photo. By photo, you mean the second photograph of the crime scene? Precisely. You see, he wasn't wearing his hat then. I saw his head when he was dead. Then Mr. Wright came along and replaced his hat. Can you describe the scene of the crime for us? Okay.
Hold it!
Those were the only three at the scene of the crime? Yes, as far as I saw, at least. Then we're back where we started. The killer was the defendant, Phoenix Wright. Who else could it have been? But why didn't you talk to the police? 2 reasons. First, I didn't actually witness the very moment of the crime. Second, my office was asked to defend Wright. Even after seeing what I had seen, I couldn't abandon my friend.
Objection!
There must have been someone else there at the moment of the crime. Justice, I just said I saw no one, not a soul. That goes against what Mr. Wright said. Ah, yes, this mysterious 4th person, who would conveniently be the real killer, I suppose. Glad to see we agree, Mr. Gavin. Let me pose a question, then. Tell me, what possible reason did the real killer have to swap cards in the victim's hand? Eh? Perhaps you can show us a reason why such a thing would be necessary? How can I show something I can't find myself? Remember, Apollo, the card that was swapped out was the 5th ace. The 5th ace. Right! Well, Mr. Justice, the question of why the killer would swap out the card has been raised. Can you point to a reason? I guess I can, sure. It's now or never. The defense would like to present evidence to the court. Evidence showing the reason why a card was swapped out. Then go ahead and point out your reason, Mr. Justice. Why did the killer take the 5th ace? Well, currently prevailing theory? I guess because it's got blood on it? My reason is, this. Is that an ace? Why, it's got blood on it. Right next to the spade. What? This is insane. Why wasn't I told about this? Why? Could this be? Could this be the missing 5th ace? Inconceivable! How could you? What are you doing with that card? Well, that's the thing. A magician girl gave it to me? I don't know if that's gonna fly in court, though. Why is Mr. Gavin so upset? It's just a fishy card from some fishy girl. Oh, that card? It's mine. That is, I picked it up at the Borscht Bowl Club that night after the murder had occurred. And I gave it to my daughter. Cards are her stock in trade, after all.
Objection!
No! Impossible! Unacceptable! This court can't accept this evidence. It's a fraud. Fraud? How can you be so sure? But, what? I would think the only person who could claim it was a fraud would be the one who took the real card from the crime scene. The real killer. Allow me to elaborate. Please do. I like seeing you work. What if this trace of blood was the reason? The reason for the killer to take the card from the scene of the crime? Where are you going with this? Take another look at the photo, and at the victim's head. At the moment of the crime, his hat fell to the floor, and a trickle of blood ran from his forehead down the back of his head. Couldn't a drop of that blood have fallen on one of the cards? I mean, conceivably, but wouldn't it... If this... No, that... I don't think that's the case, though. I suppose. The killer then took the card to hide the blood. Regardless, this evidence is non-permissible. Oh? Right. Regardless of how you wasted the last 7 years, you used to be a lawyer. You know what a serious crime it is to conceal evidence. Oh, we can discuss the finer points of our legal system later. What's important now is that I've answered your question. What are you talking about? You wanted to know why the killer would have taken a card from the crime scene. And now, I've told you. That one drop of blood would have been decisive evidence, you see.
Objection!
This is baseless conjecture! Baseless!
Objection!
Yeah? Oh, I assure you, it's quite based. Yeah, that's absolutely been used as a meme. What? It's amazing, really, how a single drop of blood on a single card can lead us to the truth. It's quite simple. Well, Apollo? Yes? Try picturing the scene of the crime. In your head. Oh. Oh, look at the graphics! The murder took place in the hideout. The body of the luckless victim was found at the poker table. And before the killer swapped a card out, there was a single card with a drop of blood on it in the victim's hand. Given this, there is one decisive problem with this scene. Well, what is it? Let's keep it simple, shall we? Given that there was a drop of blood on a card, whose position in this diagram doesn't fit. Okay, so we are addressing this. The victims, the killers, the witnesses, the second witnesses? Whose position doesn't fit with the bloody card? It would be him.
Take that!
The blood wouldn't have gone on the card. Well, isn't it the victim's position that's the problem? Well, I don't follow your logic here, Mr. Justice. Well, look, the victim was struck on the head, sending him back in his chair. You'd think any blood would fall behind the body, not under the table in front of him. Ah! Take a look at the photo again. If he bled in this position, the blood would fall on the floor, not on the cards. Why, that's right! So, what does this mean? Incidentally, we were sitting in swivel chairs. Oh, swivel chairs? Oh, man. Apollo, try turning the chair around. Okay. Well, I mean, that would do it. The chair was facing the other way? It would have to be. I guess it would. So, we have to assume that at the time of the murder, the victim's chair was facing away from the table. When Mr. Wright returned from informing the police, which way was the chair facing? When I came back to the room, the body was facing as seen in the photo. That would mean the killer turned the chair back around. Let's take the next step. Look at the diagram once more. We know that the victim was facing away from the table at the time of the murder. But this creates another significant contradiction. Again? Let's test your reasoning skills again, shall we? Apollo, whose location on this diagram contradicts our new understanding of the crime? The victims, the killers, the witnesses, the second witnesses? Whose location creates a contradiction in the victim's if the victim was facing this way? Well, if the victim was facing that way, it seems kind of unlikely that the killer would be able to do their thing, I would guess. The victim was struck from the front, correct? Indeed. Well, wouldn't it be hard for the killer to hit him from the front? Sitting where his indicator currently is? I would think it'd be quite hard, yes. Yes, but what you're saying makes no sense. Why would the victim suddenly turn to face the wall in the middle of a game? I believe a sufficient reason will soon come to light. What? There's something in this diagram that makes far less sense, actually. Look again at the diagram. Apollo, if the victim was struck while he was sitting as shown here, where would his assailant be standing? Try marking it on the diagram. What? But there's no room to put a mark where the killer should be. Don't worry. Let's think it through and see what we find. We know the victim was facing toward the wall at the time of the crime. That's the only thing we know for sure. Try to forget about everything else. Where would the killer have to be standing to strike our victim from the front? Inside a container? I guess?
Take that!
The killer had to be standing, well, here. You get points for flair, but that's all you get. Woo? I thought I was onto something here, too. I hardly need to point out that standing there would be impossible. The victim is facing a solid cupboard. Or are you claiming the killer climbed the cupboard and hit him from above? I mean, that'd be pretty dope. I'm not going to say that it wouldn't be, but I doubt it. It's simple logic, really. If this was the only place the killer could have been standing, then that means that, at the very moment of the crime... Wait, I know! At the moment of the crime, the cupboard wasn't there! What's this now? I mean, that's the only explanation, right, Mr. Gavin? Your Honor, I have a suggestion for the defense. We should arrange to examine the cupboard and the hideout immediately. Bailiff, send a team to the crime scene immediately. Have them try to move the cupboard. Your Honor? What? There's one more thing your men should look for. Please give this to the bailiff. Yes, I see. You do belong in the courtroom after all, Mr. Wright. I do my best. I am curious. But let's forge ahead here while we wait. Look at the diagram once again. It's been changed. If the killer was standing here at the time of the crime, then this cupboard wasn't here. Which means... Apollo, try moving the cupboard. Okay, sure. Thank you. You're welcome. As you can see, the cupboard was the problem. At the time of the murder, it has to have been shown, as shown here. And blocking the window. Now everything is in place to reconstruct the moment of the crime. Oh my. What's this? What is it now? Look at the diagram of the crime scene once more. It appears we found yet another contradiction. What I believe to be the final contradiction, in fact. Oh, dang! Notice something, Apollo? Our line of deduction is rapidly approaching its logical conclusion. Now then, Mr. Justice, please point to the new contradicting indicator. Is it the victim, the killer, the witness, the second witness? Which is it? Tell me now! Which indicator is the diagram containing? You can't see into the thing! You can't see no more! About this cupboard. Are we all okay with assuming it was moved? Sure, why not? Well, if it was, something really doesn't fit. The cupboard would be completely covered up the window to the stairs. That's right. Someone standing outside wouldn't be able to see in. Someone like Mr. Gavin! What did you say? Oh, is the coolest defense in the West losing his cool? Don't expect me to play along with your little game, right? It's only a game until someone gets killed, Mr. Gavin. And someone was, while the window to that room was blocked by a cupboard. So, Mr. Gavin, perhaps you'd like to explain to the court exactly where did you witness the crime scene from? Excuse me, Your Honor. Order! This is a court of law and I will have order! We just received word from our investigation team at the Borspool Club. They've examined the cupboard and the hideout, Your Honor. Oh? And what did they find? Well, Your Honor, it turns out there's a secret passage behind it. What? Yes, I believe I mentioned something of the sort before. This is one of the tricks to the room many of our regulars knew about. I do remember him saying something about that now that he mentions it. A secret passage is a handy thing to have when you're engaged in illegal goings-ons. You never know when you might need to duck away from the eyes of the law. So the room has a secret passage. Well, where does it go? The other side connects to the restaurant above. The underworld bosses could get away from the cops. And enjoy a cold bowl of borscht, no doubt. Just like our killer. Well, damn. He seems a little calm, though. You see where our line of simple deductive reasoning has led us, Apollo? I see it, but I don't believe it. That girl wasn't kidding when she said I needed this trump card for the last hand. At the time of the murder, the window was blocked and the victim's hat was only off his head for the few minutes between Mr. Smith's murder and Mr. Wright's return from calling the cops. In other words, the only place anybody could have seen the victim's bald head was from inside the hideout. Well, Mr. Gavin? Come on, say something. Dare I ask what really happened that night? Actually, I think we could probably figure it out ourselves at this point. That night, for whatever reason, our killer had a date with Mr. Smith. A date with destiny. There he crouched, hidden in the secret passageway behind the cupboard, holding his breath, waiting for the right moment. Then the chance came, and he took it. What? Why did you do that? Wait here, I'll get help. Miss Olga O'Reilly was out cold, struck by Mr. Smith. But his time was soon to come. Mr. Wright went upstairs to call the cops, leaving Mr. Shady Smith alone in the hideout with the unconscious dealer. Then our killer stepped out from the secret passage and into the hideout. The victim must have heard the cupboard sliding aside. He wheeled his chair around to look and... After the deed was done, the criminal must have seen the blood on the card. He would have, of course, realized the need to destroy the evidence. That single spot of blood told the whole story of the crime. Too bad for him, he didn't linger any longer in the hideout that night. If he had, he might have noticed the cards on the floor. And the fact that they were all red. Seems pretty definitive to me. Well, it seems this trial has taken yet another turn. I'm truly, truly sorry I had to see this day come, Mr. Gavin. Mr. Gavin? Mr. Payne? Yeah. Well, yes, Your Honor, hi. The prosecution will continue its investigation. As for Mr. Phoenix Wright, the defendant, he is hereby cleared of all suspicion. Gwark? Believe me when I say that I don't believe this is happening, Mr. Gavin. But I'm afraid circumstances call for me to issue a warrant for your arrest immediately. Oh, now what? Oh, no need to apologize. I rather enjoyed myself. It's not every day you get to witness a legendary attorney's dirty tactics firsthand. Your point, Mr. Gavin? Frankly, Your Honor, I'm shocked that a person of your caliber would be taken in by such a low-grade parlor trick. Excuse me? The defendant is cleared of all suspicion. This is hardly the time for jokes, Your Honor. Mr. Wright hasn't proved anyone's guilt or innocence here. What he has done is use illegal evidence to put the blame on someone else. And not just anyone else, but me, his own defense attorney. Illegal evidence?
Objection!
Let me ask you, Mr. Gavin. Is there still any reason at present to suspect me of wrongdoing? Of course! This bottle, for instance. The bottle of grape juice Mr. Wright was drinking? How do you intend to explain away the fingerprints on the murder weapon? And not just any fingerprints, am I right, Mr. Payne? Actually, yes. The fingerprints on the bottle were, upside down. I seem to recall this being an issue earlier. The court, in this case, demand an explanation. I can think of only one reason why one would hold a bottle upside down. Then you've literally never picked up a bottle off of the ground, I guess. And that is to hit someone with the bottom of the bottle. Well, Your Honor? See how the caught fish squirms to the last? Well, Apollo? Yeah? Your boss seems awfully concerned about this bottle still. But I'm sure you can come up with a suitable explanation, just like that. Yeah. Just like what? Why would anyone grab a bottle upside down other than to... Don't let him trick you into thinking his explanation is the only legitimate one. Is there really another? Take another look at the court record. I believe you'll find a simple answer there. I already saw it, don't worry. In plain sight. How about you just say the answer in plain words? Nah, it would be hasty to deliver a verdict with unanswered questions indeed. Well, Mr. Justice, Mr. Gavin said that the court in this case demand an explanation. Don't worry, justice won't leave until justice is done. Perhaps the defense would care to enlighten the court? What evidence do you have to explain why the fingerprints on the bottle are upside down? I have this. It's actually easier to show you than explain, Your Honor. Place that bottle on the floor next to your chair. Excuse me? On the floor? Yeah. Now, reach down and pick it up. Without getting out of your chair. Yeah. See? You naturally go to pick up the bottle by its neck. With your fingies. Upside down! Look at this photograph taken on the night of the murder. The defendant, Mr. Wright, sat here, playing piano, bottles of grape juice on the floor to the side of his piano bench. You would have naturally picked up the bottles upside down several times. Wow, I can't believe it was that simple. Recall our dinner that evening, Christoph. I was drinking my usual juice then, too. Basically, you used the bottle on the table to do the deed, but then you must have remembered. So you went and picked up one of the bottles from under the piano, and just switched the bottles. You took one of Mr. Wright's bottles and made it look like the murder weapon. Order! 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 What do you have to say to these charges, Mr. Gavin? You are no smug. Fascinating. So this is the legendary attorney's famed tactic of misdirection. What? You claim that I switched the bottle? Where is your proof? Huh? Proof? Well, that's, as I thought. More baseless conjecture. I'm afraid your bottle of proof is quite empty.
Objection!
I wouldn't be so sure about that. Your Honor, when you initiated the investigation of the hideout earlier, do you recall I requested an additional investigation? Ah, yes. I have your memo about that here. Retrieve the bottles from under the piano at the Borsbool Club. And here's one of the bottles in question. What, are you going to dust that for fingerprints too? I'd be surprised if any were on that but his. Mr. Gavin probably wouldn't have made such a novice mistake, true. That bottle won't bear a trace of anything. Say, Apollo. Yeah? Why don't you go ahead and examine that bottle? But why? Just humor me. Mr. Wright. That bottle will solve this case once and for all. Huh? That's some bottle. Oh, well. There you go. There's something inside the bottle. Well, 5 of hearts. What's this? That card. It can't be. Recall that unpleasant woman's testimony for a moment. Miss Olga Aurelie? Yes, our little swindling Divotka. That night, I planted the card like I was supposed to, and Wright lost the last hand just like he was supposed to. Then Smith searched him, but the planted card was gone. The trap failed. Wait, this isn't... You're telling me that this is the planted card you disposed of? The one you mentioned in this piece of testimony. I happened to put my hand in my pocket and found a card. Yes, I snuck a peek at it and found it was the 5 of hearts. I had a feeling something might happen, so I disposed of the card before the game. Disposed? Where? There was an empty bottle of grape juice I'd been drinking right beside me. I threw the card inside the bottle. And thus, proof positive, you swapped the bottles. The 5 of hearts. This is the card. The bottles were swapped. And the only one who could have done that was the 4th person in the club that night. You, Mr. Christoph Gavin. Lobster! That is all. That was cool. Is this your idea of revenge, Phoenix Wright? Revenge? Revenge? Revenge for the events that took away your attorney's badge 7 years ago. My past is like my logic. Straight and true. Nothing's changed. All I did was point the finger of justice in the proper direction. Fine. I'm glad we could have this little tat-a-tat, right? This is insane! What about me? Don't I get to prosecute anyone? Shut up, Payne. You're not a part of this. I believe this time we finally come to the end of our trial. Mr. Payne, do you have a report for us on Christoph Gavin? He's admitted everything. We're processing his arrest now. I see. Still, one has to wonder why he would do such a thing. He didn't even have a connection to the victim, did he? None that we know of. Mr. Wright, have you anything to add? I'm afraid I can't shed any more light on that matter. About this victim, Mr. Shady Smith. His occupation was listed as traveler. An odd profession to be sure, and that's all we know about him. I'll arrange a follow-up investigation, Your Honor. Good. Mr. Wright? Yes? 7 years and you still haven't lost your touch. Christoph Gavin was a man with much significance for me, both as a friend and a lawyer. He was extremely talented, to be sure. I needed 2 things before I could confront him. The first was a place where no injustice would be tolerated, this courtroom. The second was a man who would tolerate no injustice. In other words, a defense attorney. You, Apollo. Me? This is a dark time for our legal system. A twisting of justice brought on by our very own initial trial system. We have to set it right. Mr. Wright? Our work lies ahead of us. And I, for one, am looking forward to it. Well, this seems like a good time to announce a verdict. The court finds the defendant, Mr. Phoenix Wright. Very good. Court is adjourned. Whew. Well, there you go, I guess. Thanks, Apollo. You came through just like I thought you would. I'm pretty sure I didn't do a thing in there. It was you who cornered the killer. I couldn't have done it by myself. You sensed it too today, didn't you? Your ability. Ability? I mean, I do remember that, but I would like to know how you knew about it. Yes, a sensitivity I lack. You'll come to understand it soon enough. Wait, I wonder if he means... when I saw some sort of weird negative dimension. This weird vibe. The weird vibe! What was that, Mr. Wright? You'll have to find the answer to that question yourself. Answer. Right. Today was full of questions without answers. Most of them about Mr. Gavin. What possible reason could he have had to commit murder? Perhaps you'll learn that in the days to come. Huh? Wait, you don't know, do you? This locket is the key. What? That reminds me, I met the girl whose picture is in your locket. Although, admittedly, she's older than I would have thought, which is confusing. Your daughter, right? That's right. She's my daughter. You know, you were right about this locket. Eh? I took this off his neck the night he died. And it looks like our dear Russian scam artist saw me. So the truth is, this locket really did belong to him. Why did this guy have a locket with your daughter's picture in it? Wait, but that's perjury! Perjury! You testified! You said that locket was yours! I said no such thing, actually. Huh? I merely said that it was a locket with my daughter's picture inside. A subtle distinction, but a distinction nonetheless. And it's the truth. Wait, but then, why? Why was the victim wearing a locket with a picture of your daughter inside it? Sometimes the straightest path to the truth isn't the best one. Give it time. You're still just getting started with your career. Speaking of which, I may be out of a job. I work for Gavin Law Offices, after all. I still can't believe I just saw Mr. Gavin get led away in handcuffs. Apollo. Yes? How about coming to work for me? Eh? You mean at the Wright & Co. law offices? I mean, there's not a single attorney in my generation that doesn't know it. Can't imagine that to be true, but... Wait, but didn't you... You're not a... Oh, I turned in my badge, yes. I'm not an attorney anymore. You mind elaborating? That incident 7 years ago. That legendary trial. And at the middle of it all was one man. Phoenix Wright. The case reached its sad conclusion and he left law for good. Have you ever thought about coming back to the courts? I'm not qualified to stand in a court of law, I'm afraid. Didn't you notice in today's trial? There was a single piece of forged evidence? Forged evidence? What are you talking about? I'm talking about evidence that shouldn't have existed. A naughty magician's trick. One piece of evidence struck me as odd, it's true. It just seemed, well, too perfect. I'll bet this was the forged evidence.
Take that!
You mean this, don't you? I got this from your daughter, Mr. Wright. Yeah, that card couldn't have been found at the crime scene. Why? Because the killer took it with him when he left. Leaving the wrong card in its place, luckily for us. The court can't accept this evidence, it's a fraud. A fraud? How can you be so sure? I would think the only person who could claim it was a fraud would be the one who took the real card from the crime scene. The real killer. I do recall. My verdict was already handed down 7 years ago. Then, you really... Yes, I forged this card. One look at the crime scene should have told you it wasn't real. But you can't do something like that and call yourself an attorney. Who's calling themselves an attorney, Paulo? So it's true. The rumor is true. 7 years ago. None of that matters much now, does it? Grok! I punched him. It's your story from here on out, Apollo. Perhaps I can help you turn the next page. My office's address. Drop in if you like. Mr. Wright. Oh, about your uppercut. Try yelling, "Take that," next time. I find it packs a little more punch. And Apollo, thanks for today. I had a good time. And with that, Mr. Wright walked out the door. And that's how my first trial ended. A lot of mysteries went unsolved. And at the time, I had no idea they were all related. Every mystery that day, connected by a single thread of logic. I'd find that out soon enough. My name is Apollo Justice, attorney at law. And this is how my story begins. Hell of a beginning. God damn. Whew. Well, alright then. I very much would like answers to all of the questions that I have in my head. I want to know how Phoenix lost his badge. I want to know how he has a daughter. The only possible thought... I mean, I'll save my thoughts. It's always best to save them for when they're relevant, but I have ideas, I guess. Alright, well. One case down, several to go. I guess we'll all see what happens next time. Hope you enjoyed it. Because I feel like it's just gonna get crazier. I'll see you all next time.